Hey everybody, it's Bob Crossan, Senior Managing Editor for Water and Waste Digest. I am here today with Michael Warady. He is president of the Silmar Group, and he's also one of our 2021 WWD Young Pros. As you have no doubt likely noticed, we have been doing one-on-one video interviews with every single one of our young pros this year. You can catch them every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and also on our website. And you can sign up for a video alert newsletter to get them into your inbox. So let's talk to Michael now. There's only one more of these left after this interview with Michael, so definitely check out our playlist, which is in the description. But let's talk to Michael. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time, and congrats on being a young pro.
Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate it.
And I love that I can hear the chirp of the birds there. It's so nice after such a long winter for me here in Chicago.
That's the beauty of Southern California. We always have it.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to talk, kind of start at the top level of your career to kind of get an idea of how you got into the industry to begin with, because you started in like solar energy and whatnot. So could you talk a little bit about your career path and how you landed with the Silmar Group and how you got to where you are with your position today?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so I think within the water sector, my career path may be a little bit different than most. So I actually started off in energy. My first job out of college, I bought myself a one-way ticket, moved to China, and ended up spending about 3.5 years there doing solar panel manufacturing, quality control, financial due diligence of a lot of the larger solar panel manufacturers that operate kind of within China mainland. And while I was over there, just got really interested in this idea of, globally, and for a lot of the right reasons, we are spending a lot of money on updating and retrofitting and growing our electrical grid, whether it's with renewables or non-renewables. And yet, kind of within all those countries, we also see a dramatic underinvestment in water and wastewater infrastructure. It's kind of unseen, under our feet. Nobody cares about it until it's too late. And so living in China for those years and never drinking water out of the tap, always drinking bottled water, seeing kind of relatively horrific news about industrial wastewater discharges into aquifers, into streams, et cetera, got me interested in this kind of underappreciated, underinnovated, underinvested space of infrastructure, which is water. So came back to the States, have worked across the project finance, kind of venture capital backed filtration, kind of long-term infrastructure developer world. And then about 2 years ago with a business partner, we started up Silmar Group with this vision of what's really lacking in the water industry isn't necessarily just technology. It's not just money. It's not just time. It's kind of a combination of all three. And so our vision at Silmar is to go out and partner with founders that are looking to transition out of businesses, acquire those businesses, and then operate them with kind of a 100-year time frame, rather than a typical 5 or 7 year, which, as we all know, the folks that are watching this video, 5 or 7 years is the blink of an eye in the water industry. So instead, focus on how can you grow something that our great grandkids will talk about, rather than something that we kind of transition to our next widget in the next few years.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really interesting point you bring up about like longevity of companies. It's that's something that I didn't think about in terms of like even the life cycle of certain things that you buy. The life cycles are so long that like you don't want to be a business that goes out of business before the life cycle ends, right? So,
Right. I mean, and they always say, I mean, one of the great stats that I've heard is, the average time frame from new water technology to first commercial sell is 7 years. And so I think with that in mind, our vision has always been, the great businesses that we've read about in the 19th, 20th century of America, their vision was to grow something that you continue to reinvest into people, into services, into surrounding geographies. And so rather than try and do something with a relatively short time frame where you aren't able to make those investments because it won't make sense in that 5 years, instead, why not think about something that will pay off in 5, 7, 10, 20 years? Because that's really where you're going to see the growth over the long term. And frankly, which is what gets me excited.
mhm. Yeah, and what also seems to get you excited is like these digital emerging technologies, how they're entering into the water universe and the water sector and everything like that. I'm curious why place such a high importance on like those digital technologies and what you think that means for the sector moving forward.
Sure. Well, so at one of my previous roles, I helped invest into a real-time water quality monitoring technology company. I think I just generally keep pretty good tabs on new tech that's coming into the space, whether it's on kind of CSO overflow management or water quality monitoring, or just kind of automation in terms of control systems. And I think what we've seen generally within the water and wastewater space, is it's oftentimes hard to adopt these new technology. It's kind of hard to make that digital lift because the industry has been operating in much the same way over the past several decades, and it's worked, right? But I think as we see that federal investment in water infrastructure has declined over time, right? Maybe there's another infrastructure package, maybe there's not. I think we see a declining and aging workforce within the water and wastewater sector. And so within this world, there's always going to be the need for great operators, right? That will never change. But I think what we are also going to see is the adoption of technologies that can supplement some of those skills and capabilities of kind of the human workforce, so that rather than an operator spending several hours a day kind of doing windshield time to the next water treatment facility, instead they pull up an app on their phone and see how things are operating. And that's just a better use of time, better use of resources, and frankly will kind of improve treatment outcomes. And so I think what gets me excited is we see all these new technologies coming up. We see the glaring need kind of broadly across the industry. And I kind of see generally folks are getting more and more receptive to adopting those technologies. And I think we're about to hit kind of that hockey stick style growth in terms of adoption.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about the water industry, it's from a from a technology adoption standpoint, it's rather conservative, and I feel like a lot of that is rooted in what makes a lot of sense. You know, when you're talking about drinking water, erring on the side of conservative is probably a good thing to do so that you don't like ruin
Absolutely.
a water supply. Um, but I'm curious too about kind of your age group and your generation and how they're going to influence this type of thing. Like a lot of young professionals have said that they see this as being the future because that's what they've known, right? So could you talk a little bit about how you see like peers your age will influence the industry, whether it's from this digital technology adoption standpoint or from for some other standpoint? Where do you see or how do you see your generation influencing things moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? I think every generation always says that they're going to solve all the problems that the older generations did not, and so I won't go that far. But what I do think is, the folks coming up in the industry right now, starting to take on more leadership and management roles, I think have a greater tech fluency than some of the folks that are 2, 3, 4 decades older than they are. And so I think just generally, familiarity with iPhones, familiarity with VR, there are just going to be a lot more opportunities for folks to pilot, side stream different technologies. And as they take on greater roles at facilities, at engineering consulting firms, and just have a greater kind of intrinsic comfort with those new technologies, that will just allow them to be slowly adopted into kind of the mainstream operations of a facility. So I think it's less of a this generation versus that generation dynamic, and it's more just we grew up in a world where kind of internet interconnectivity was something that we are used to, and so I think especially in some of the maybe smaller and medium-sized facilities that don't have the ability to hire a new operator or don't have the ability to kind of go out and do cure and place pipeline replacement throughout their entire distribution infrastructure. The alternative there is adopting, I'll say, more advanced technology solutions that can try and reduce that initial upfront investment while providing them with ongoing operational improvement. And so that's really where I see our generation playing a role, and that's what gets me excited.
Yeah, and I think one of the things to note too with those new technologies is that it's all about simplicity too, because if you can make the simplicity of that thing so easy to use that it doesn't become an additional burden to an already overburdened utility in most situations,
Exactly right.
that there's more chance that that this adoption works too. You need that buy-in from that angle too.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I wanted to pivot a little bit here now. Let's talk a little bit about Access Books. You volunteer for this in the area,
Yeah,
in I believe it's LA, right?
that's
Could you
correct.
talk a little bit about Access Books? Why do you volunteer there, and why do you place such an importance on that organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a relatively recent transplant to Southern California. I grew up in Kansas City, spent time in the South, spent time abroad, and then most recently moved from Connecticut in the Northeast. And so when I landed in Southern California, in addition just to the overall need for improvements within the water and wastewater infrastructure and kind of industry here, I also was interested in kind of getting involved more with the community and kind of figuring out what is that Venn diagram connection between my own interests and kind of what the community needs outside of the water industry. Um, and I ran across this group called Access Books, and their mission is to go in and retrofit, paint, resupply public school libraries in and around the Los Angeles region. And many people don't know, but the state of California does not mandate or budget for specific funds to go into schools and replenish those libraries. And so a lot of the I'll say underserved communities in and around the area have these libraries that are outdated by several decades. They have kind of paint chipping off walls, no furniture, books that aren't what the kids are interested in nowadays. And so I got involved with this group that goes out, fundraises, buys these new books, completely refurbishes these public schools, and provides kids with an opportunity to take books home and read, whereas some of the times they don't. And so the organization's retrofitted over 250 libraries across the state.
Wow.
And this is something where I grew up in a great public school and always had access to kind of the latest, most popular books and feel very lucky about that. And so I thought this was clearly an organization that has a great mission and something that I wanted to spend time on.
Yeah. Oh man, that's really really cool. I think back too now to my school libraries and just how full of books they were, and then being able to go to the what do they call it, like Book It and stuff like that when
Yeah,
I was a
yeah.
kid.
The
Like,
book fair and all that stuff.
yeah, the
Yeah,
book fairs, the Book It, and like, oh, if you read a certain number of pages, you got a little like coupon for Pizza Hut or whatever.
that's right. That's
Like,
right.
oh man, like I can't imagine what it would have been like growing up not having something like that. So this is a really cool
Yeah,
organization.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's oh man, really really cool. I appreciate that a lot. And it gives you a direct connection to like to young kids in a way that's different from most people too.
That's
So,
right. That's right. And keeps you busy, right? I mean, I think especially over the last year and a half, I think we've all been pretty focused on kind of home and work. Just with the pandemic happening, it's been hard to focus on other things and you kind of just feel cooped up. And so this is just an it was another thing to keep your mind busy, keep myself occupied, and especially when folks weren't, in Los Angeles, we kids weren't going to school for over a year now, and so with families that didn't have those books that were at home, again, Access Books was able to um, kind of modify their plan and figure out kind of book deliveries to kids so that they could have them at home as well. So there's just a lot of great stuff that organization is doing, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
yeah, super, super cool. Well, I mean, on that note, on the talking about youth, we talked about it already with some of the workforce things that you had mentioned. The last question I'm asking all of the young pros this year because I think it's a critical one. You mentioned the workforce, the aging and retiring folks, and needing to make sure we have a good pipeline that's filling the vacancies that will occur due to retirements. So the question to you is, how would you cater to and grab the interests of the next generation of water workers?
Man, it's a great question, and I'm not sure I have all of the answer there, but I think the the water industry is kind of endlessly fascinating, right? I always refer to water as the one irreplaceable commodity on Earth, and I think everybody kind of understands the value of water, even if it's kind of in the back of their mind. That's something that's very like top of mind, like it is for all of us. And so I think what we all need to do as an industry a little bit better is start talking with folks when they're in high school or early in college. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. Actually, one of the groups that I was just working with is trying to bring kind of continuing education credits for wastewater treatment, basically, to get
Mm-hmm.
higher classifications through working within decentralized wastewater facilities. So right now, you're not actually allowed to kind of level up unless you're working at a centralized municipal treatment plant. And so I think what we need to do is working with these groups, maybe working with trade organizations where folks that may typically go into the world of HVAC or plumbing or other kind of trade industries, but instead see the water industry or the wastewater industry really as a path and opportunity going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we as an industry haven't been great at marketing it, right? It's again under appreciated, under innovated, and unseen. And so really, what we need to do as a group is start to begin to make folks appreciative of this service that is provided to them, whether it's at home or school or industry, and get them realizing how important it is just to the day-to-day lives that we all live. And if we can start to pass that message along outside of just a ASCE report card once a year, I think it'll go a long way to getting folks interested, well before they start to make some, I'll say, more serious career decisions.
Mm-hmm. Boy, that hits the nail on the head of kind of the theme that we've gotten from most of the young pros of like the to for me to paraphrase kind of everyone is let's make water visible.
Yep,
Like it
that's
just
right. That's right.
visibility is so king, especially now in the age of social media and whatnot. If you can make your industry visible just through a hashtag, it can change everything. Like it makes such a huge difference. So
Exactly right.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate all the time that you spent with us and talking us a little bit through your career path, what got you interested in everything, and a little bit more about Silmar Group too, and kind of the vision that you have there. It's really, really cool to see. We appreciate your time. And
Thanks, Bob.
for
Appreciate you having me.
yeah, and for everyone who's watching, you can check out the full article of all the young professionals in the description below. You can also check out links to the last video we just had, and we also have our playlist now in the description, so you can check that out and watch every Young Pros video. So definitely go check those out. And once again, Michael, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bob. Talk soon.